Osarume. Welcome, Osarume.
Hi, Cyprian. How you doing?
I'm all right. I'm good. How are you today?
I'm well. I'm
Fine.
well. I'm well. Thank you.
Awesome. So, please, can you? I mean, you've joined us right now, and then you are here to save us, of course. So, please, can you introduce yourself to our audience, and we'll start.
All right. Hello. Welcome, everyone. Good to be here. Cyprian, thank you so much. And yes, just standing in for GJ, who's unable to connect. So I currently transitioned from a training role at Wave, where we worked with organizations and businesses and helped train their staff, and get their employees to be able to deliver at a higher level and perform better generally. So we worked with a lot of SMEs, a lot of businesses across different industries, just helping them really address the people issue that they have with their organizations. So that's I did for quite a number of years, but now transition into just leading the direct programs at Wave, so from training young people and getting them access to opportunities, so that they could live a better life. Essentially, I think Wave, just is looking to create a world where every young person, every young African, and Nigerian can become what they imagine. So that's essentially what I do. I just coordinate, I supervise, I support the different programs that we do within the organization. So that's it for me.
Awesome. Thank you.
Yeah.
I mean, very detailed, very detailed introduction. So, of course, today we are talking about CV. Once again, thank you for joining us. All right. Today we are talking about CV. So we'll just go straight on to the first question. What is a CV? I mean, with all of the experience you've had at Wave, I'm sure that you've seen a lot of CVs too. So what is a CV and how is a CV different from a resume?
But I think, the important thing about the CV is, every time that you want to apply for a role, and Sam Dre here and a few other people had been commenting and saying interesting things around CVs, especially even with the technology hitches at the beginning of this session. But if you look at the CV, you have to also remember what is the outcome? What are you trying to achieve? So a CV is a document that really lands you in front of somebody who wants to interview you. So it's almost like I know there's the cover letter, which is really a letter, as it says, but a CV is really what lands you. It develops the interest. Usually people would say send a cover letter as a complimentary, but it's what is supposed to trigger interest, in somebody who is looking to hire. It should be your it should carry your persona, right? Your CV should be able to focus on the most important elements of who you are and what you've done, right? So your CV is not storytelling. I mean, you can do the storytelling in a cover letter or some other thing. I mean, it may be a resume as well. Maybe a resume is more of a written statement, and you could put a lot more in there if you like. But the CV is really supposed to be concise. The CV is supposed to trigger an interest in whoever is reading it to say, hey, Cyprian, I'm looking at Cyprian's CV. I want to meet this guy. There's something about the information that he has made available to me or he has exposed me to on this document, as concise and brief as it is, but I'm interested. I want to see this guy. So I think that's the interesting thing about CVs. With resumes, I mean, sometimes we use the terminology interchangeably, especially here in Africa, we say, oh, CV, resume. But I mean, and I think, Jide was already alluding to this, but the resume seems to be, more of a summary, of most of the things that you've done, or that you've been able to achieve, So whilst there is a fine line, and I know that there's also the issue of terminology. In some places, they'd rather say a resume than CV. Essentially what I want most people on the line to take away from it is you want to trigger the interest. Don't focus on information that's not essential. Sometimes people say, oh, my local government, it's additional information that's not really essential. I mean, somebody is interested in hiring you for a role. The person wants to know, what are you bringing to the table? What have you done that is relevant to what I'm looking for? So it's really your sales pitch. So CV is your sales pitch.
Wow. I mean, that's very interesting right there. That's a very interesting one. A CV is your sales pitch. All right. I mean, just straight off of talking about CVs being your sales pitch and all of the details that you provided to us, are there trends? I mean, you talked very well about CV and resume and all of the contents and everything. I mean, are there trends in CV writing that we need to observe? I mean, especially this is 2020, right? Are there certain things that you mentioned them when you were discussing CV too. Are there certain things that were obtained, that were required in the CV in 2015 that are not required in the CV in 2020?
You're definitely right. You know, times are changing. Attention span is reducing, right? So we don't have the luxury of, you know, spending all the time anymore on CVs. I mean, recruiting managers these days are about, look, if I don't see what I'm looking for, let me start by saying that one of the key things, Cyprian, right? I'd like us on the call to take away is keywords. Every time that you are writing a CV, you want to be mindful of keywords, especially when you have information about the role you're applying for, right? So you want to use keywords in terms of skills. Somebody, you know, Molade here says, people exaggerate their skills. Yes, that's true. And you will come to that in a minute. But you want to also focus on the keywords. When you read an employment, a vacancy, you know, the details of a vacancy on a website or wherever, there are certain words that are being used. There are certain terms, you know, that are being used. You want to pay attention to those terms because at the end of the day, depending on what the filtering process is for the hiring manager or whoever it is that's looking at your CV, it might be technologically driven where they just put certain things on a system and then they search through keywords. Now, if you don't have the keywords, automatically you could be shut off, you know, that recruitment process or that shortlisting process, right? Because you haven't gone to recruiting yet, but you could be shut off that process. So what you want to focus on is the keywords. What are the essential keywords that role has mentioned? Or you want to also look at, you know, what are the terms that this organization or this company use a lot, you know, in their correspondence. You want to check their website. You want to understand. Never go into writing a CV, you know, without knowing who you are writing to. Understand that you are writing to people who, one, don't have as much time, two, are looking for certain skills, traits, characteristics, and so you have to be mindful of that. So one of the things that you did then, and you probably got away with it, was writing things like your state of origin. Except there are certain requirements in terms of the vacancy that has been advertised that is asking you to give your state of origin, it's really not an essential piece of information, right? When you look at things like your local government is not essential. You know, your number in family is not essential. These days, except there's a specific requirement for gender really is not essential. So these are some of the things that you look at that we could easily get away with years ago, but now a lot of people may not be interested in. But listen, I say this carefully, that except there has been a requirement for gender or for, you know, some of these other extra information, don't put it in your CV, because you want to make your CV as concise as possible and as attractive as possible so that it catches the attention of whoever it is, you know, that's looking through. So that's very, very important, you know, at this time. And I think that there, you know, normally things like I have a hobby. You know, people used to put hobbies, you know, back then, you know, on their CVs. Yes, hobbies, you know, hobbies are fine, but I mean, they're not really that essential. You know, they're not that essential these days. Some people would rather put interests, okay? And interest, you know, is also good. I see there's a question, how important is it to have a professional email address? Absolutely. You could get away years ago, Cyprian, with writing some very interesting, fancy email addresses, you know, and I'm sure you've heard quite a few of them. You know, there are some very exotic names. But these days, it's important that because it's a professional sales pitch, remember we said it's a sales pitch document, And it's professional. It has to be professional. You're putting your best foot forward on that document. So you don't want to put in an email address that is saying something like funky@yahoo.com or funkyj@gmail.com. That doesn't connote professionalism to some extent. I mean, whilst we're not saying go and shut down that account, always have something more professional. Open an email account that you can always put on your CV, and makes you also come across as a professional, who's looking for a particular role or who's looking to fill a vacancy, right?
Great.
So what are some of the things that we could easily have gotten away with in the past? But these days, it's really about the essentials, what the essentials are. So yeah, that's what I'll say on that.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Osarume. I mean, that's very interesting. You when you were talking, you mentioned, I mean, one keyword I kept hearing in almost every sentence that you are starting is concise. Concise. And you talked about understanding the language that the organization uses. And that speaks a lot to research, right? So when you are researching, before you even start writing the CV, what are the key things that you are expected to research on to help you write a compelling CV? Research.
Great, awesome. First thing, Cyprian, is what are you applying? Understand the role, understand the organization, understand what the expectations are. Who are they looking for? Try to get into their space, try to get into their head. What sort of person are they looking for, right? What experience is relevant? I know you were saying earlier, Cyprian, that experience is something that's important. But what experience is relevant? Because you don't want to put all your experience there. Sometimes you're writing a compelling CV and someone thinks, oh, if I have 10 different experiences, then it increases my chances of getting in, because the person looks at it and says, this person, this lady or this gentleman has done quite a lot. Sometimes it's actually to your disadvantage, because it could mean that, why is this person seems confused. I don't want to hire somebody who's confused or who doesn't really know what they're doing or what they want. So you want to be able to tie your experience in relevance to what they require, right? Or to what that role requires. So that's one thing you want to pay attention to. So as you're doing your research, okay, what are the relevant skills, right? Somebody, for instance, is applying for a legal position, a law position, right, in a firm. Now, this person may have had experience where they have done something in finance, for instance, finance related. This person may have experience that they've done something, maybe even in hospitality, right, Cyprian? So you could have some experience, hospitality related, sales related, and then you also at some point worked in a law firm. Now you're applying for a law role, right? So what you're saying to yourself is, what is relevant about my experience to this role? So even if you're going to put the other roles, right, you want to be particular about the things that were relevant to that role that apply to what they are looking for in this role. Does that, do you get what I'm saying? So you may not completely take out that experience and say, oh, well, it was hospitality I worked in. Now I'm going for a legal. What is the correlation? No. Yes, it's possible that what you did was very, very different. The disparity in the roles and the duties, the tasks, very different. So in that case, you can leave it out. But you could also look at it and ask yourself, what were the things I did that are related to what I'm expected or what I would be doing in this new role? And then what you want to do is you want to be able to marry that, okay, into your experience, so that what you're doing is you're strengthening the competence that you are selling, right? You're not just putting experience for the fun of putting it. I've done this, I've done that. Hey, congratulations. But you want to be able to look at what are the similarities, what are the common things in what I have done in my past, even if it's in a different industry, and how does that relate to what I would be expected to do in this particular role. Yeah, so there was a question around putting your image, I think your photograph, on your CV. There was a question around that. I mean, sometimes there's a need to put a picture, you know, put an image, a face to the name. Sometimes people want to just have a face to the name, and there are many times where they would require that you attach an image, you know, so a passport photograph. Sometimes they would require that, you know, they would ask for it. But I mean, I think one of the things about writing the CV is if those things are not requested, you really want to be able to put your best foot forward, right? So it's important that you definitely have a professional headshot, if possible. And if it's something that's requested, please go ahead and add it. If it's not requested, I would say, you know, keep the curiosity till the person meets you and puts a face to the name. That's what I would say on that on that point. Yeah, please go ahead.
Keep the curiosity. That's a very key word right there. Keep the security. Don't give too much out. So I see one question. Can you talk about that question? Can you answer the question? All right. Let's read in the questions as they're coming. So the question says, does it mean that we must have different CVs, particularly tailored for each application? Hello?
Sorry, Cyprian, for the movement. But yeah, I heard that. Does it mean we should have different CVs for different roles? Yeah, I mean, definitely. You know, you don't want to have, I think there was also something that somebody on the call had raised earlier. Forgive me for the movement. I just needed to attend to something. But yeah, it's important that you have one CV, which is almost like your dashboard CV, right? So you go to that CV and you always pull out your different experiences based on the relevance, you know, the different things that you've done based on their relevance to what you're applying for. Okay, so it helps you really adjust. You don't want to just have one which you are sending to multiple roles, because you will apply to multiple roles. And depending on your skill set or your competencies, there are certain skills that you may have developed from the previous role that are highly transferable to a new role.
So with everything that you've discussed, all of the details, very interesting things that you say, how many pages is a CV, a standard compelling CV expected to have?
I'll ask you an interesting question, Cyprian. How many pages would you be happy if you were an employer to read? How many pages of information of somebody applying would you be happy to read? Just you know, just a random question. Or would you have the time to read? Now you're a business owner, you know, you hire lots of people, somebody's applying or people are applying, you know, for a particular role that you've advertised. How many pages
will I be willing to? I mean, very right. I would say one.
All right. So you want to choose your fonts wisely. You don't want to go really fancy. It's not a design experiment. You have to put that at the back of your mind. When you're writing and putting together that document, you want to consider font styles like Arial, Calibri, Times New Roman. Yeah, I believe Times New Roman, Arial, and perhaps Calibri. But a lot of people would say Times New Roman or Arial, you know, are the safest to go with. So those are the sort of font styles. You don't want to go to all the Comic Sans, MS. You don't want to go into all the Tahomas. I mean, it's not a design experiment. So you have to realize that you want to keep as professional as possible, right? Font size, you want to keep it to 11-12. Okay, you don't want it to be you don't want your letters to appear bogus, right? You want to be able to keep it as not too tiny, okay, so that people can also see and they're not straining to read what you've written. So 11, 12, I mean 12 would be your ceiling for your font size, and then your Arial or Times New Roman, and then if at all Calibri, you know, but try to stay to those two. The other thing that, you know, we had talked about was the email address. have a professional email address. And somebody had, I think Molade had said it earlier, that it's safer to put your name, your first name, and then maybe your initial or your first name and your surname at whatever email account you use. So if it's Google, if it's Gmail, if it's Yahoo Mail, it's MSN, whatever it is, have your first name and last name, or have your initials and then your first name or last name, and then at whatever it is .com, right? So you don't want to put all those fancy, funky J or funky T or baddest E. That's very unprofessional. The next thing you want to put is your contact details. So you want to put your mobile, your phone number. Your email is also it's part of contact details, right? And sometimes people say address, put address, or don't put address. With a professional CV, I would advise that you put your address, except it's requested or it's been specifically asked for. Okay, so you could leave your address out because I don't know that anybody is going to come and find you these days, or anybody. Some organizations might do some background checks on people who have applied to say, oh, is this person actually who they say they are, and then maybe just do those background checks. But except it's expressly requested for, I don't think it's essential. Once you finish with that, then you want to go into what you've done in your education. So some people, it's the next thing they would do is their educational experience. What have you studied? What certifications do you have? Secondary, university. These days, depending on how long you've left secondary school, there's really no use putting your primary school leaving certificate, your secondary. If it's a while ago, you want to concentrate on the most recent. So you can put in if you went to university, you could put in your university. If you went to secondary school, high school, you could put that detail in there as well. Okay, but you don't want to go too far behind into all of the different things you've done, right? And then once you've done that, you could also then go into the experience you have, professional experience. So you've worked at different places. Even if you've not had a formal job, you may have done some informal jobs here and there. You want to be able to put that in a structured way. Where did you do it? What's the name of the organization? What was the thing you were doing? What were the key responsibilities or the key duties that you performed there? And then obviously just a timeline, so you want to also be very, and start with the most recent. It's always important to start with the most recent. So whether it's your experience in work or your education, you want to start with the most recent. Don't start with the one you did 10 years ago. Start with the most recent. So in that chronological order, you're moving from most recent to least recent. So that's very important. And so once you've done that, some people have, professional certifications. Some people will say they've gotten awards, they've had some achievements. They want to have a section on that. Again, remember, it's your sales speech. So put it in, make sure it's also relevant, and try to make it as attractive as possible. Please don't create false information, all in the name of making it attractive. Work with what you have, craft what you have in the best way possible, and I'm sure that you have some very interesting experience that a lot of people would like to know about on your CV. So focus on that, and then there's certain key competencies that you may have. You want to also sell that, certain things that you've built over time from the different roles, key competencies. You might want to just also put that in to show that you've done this, and put some evidence. Don't just sometimes people say excellent communicator, excellent communication skills. What does that mean? What's the evidence? Some people say fantastic leadership. All these very fancy and interesting things. It's more than just excellent leadership. Excellent leadership is a big deal. If you're an excellent leader, you should have some evidence that shows you're an excellent leader. So don't get carried away with all this fancy terminologies that people use. Great listener, when you get to key competencies, excellent communicator, and then that being true to yourself, you struggle with communicating, you struggle with eye contact. So be true to yourself on your CV, but take the strengths that you have, take the really creative and interesting sides of you and push it. You don't have to lie, you don't have to put false information out there. So you want to be able to wrap it up like that. Make it as brief, as concise as possible, but make sure you're putting your best foot forward, and make sure that you are using keywords. Make sure your experience is relevant to the role you are applying for. Make sure you do not have errors. Yes, I have to say this. Make sure you proofread as many times as possible. You can give 5 of your friends to proofread. Sometimes you read something repeatedly and you may not find the errors because you're one who's read it, and there's something about the mind about just adapting to those errors. So you might not pick out the errors. Give it to as many people as possible to proofread. They can spot any misspelling, mistakes, punctuation, omissions. You don't want to be caught there, because that also sends a real message to whoever is reading it that you don't pay attention to detail. And you can't have on your CV as key competence or an exceptional skill or trait that you pay attention to detail, and then somebody is seeing that you are using capital letters where you ought not to. You're not putting a full stop where you should have. You're not putting, say, I pay attention to detail. It's contradictory because evidence shows otherwise. So don't shoot yourself in the foot that way. So make sure you read. Make sure you're also mindful of the caps. When you're writing, you know your nouns, the name of an organization. Make sure there's if you're using the first letter is capital, and then the rest are small for names. Some people decide to use all caps for the name of an organization or the name of their school or an institution attended. Whatever you choose to do, make sure there is uniformity. In your first experience, don't have all caps for the name of the organization. Then you go to your second experience, and then one just with the first letter is caps. Other ones are. It shows this. It shows that there's no cohesion. So let there be cohesion. Let there be uniformity. Be consistent. If you're writing in a particular style, use that style. If you are using a blocked format, use block for everything. If you are using bullet points, for all of the things you're listing, mindful of the bullet points. Don't design some very I use this design for this bullet point, I use this for the other. It's not a design experiment again. Be mindful, be professional, put your best foot forward, think about essential information. And I think one of the things that usually helps in eliminating what is essential versus what is not essential is, if I don't put this information, what do I stand to lose? If I don't include this information, what do I stand to lose? So that's always a good test in finding the essential elements that you need to include in your CV.
Thank you very much, Osarume. I mean, let's take just you've spoken at length. I mean, you've talked about everything, the whole structure and content of the CV. So we'll take one more question even as we are wrapping up. And thanks to our audience members too. So there is one last question that I would like for us to talk about before we wrap up and go, right? And even as we continue to learn by ourselves too. The question is, an achievement-based CV versus an activity-based CV. Which one is most preferable?
Activity versus achievement, right? Understand who you're applying to. I think there's, it's no cookie cut jar. There's understand who you are sending this to. Some people, they may be few, they may be more, very concerned or particular about activity. This person is very hardworking. This person, but some people are results oriented. They're results driven. It's about what results are you able to get? How do you bring that to the table, rather than all the different things you've done? So you could have somebody who's done 2 things, gotten interesting and amazing results. You could have another person who's done 5 things, and they've just done 5 things for the sake of doing things, haven't achieved much in terms of results and outcomes. So activity, achievement, if you ask me, I would say that your activity could be there, but let your activity let it be complemented by your results, by some of the things you were able to achieve. So achievement-led activity, if there's anything like that. So rather than achievement-led and activity-led. Achievement-led activities would be a great place to start from.
Wow. Thank you very much, Osarume, for joining us today. I mean, you've spoke at length and you've told us a lot of things about CV. And I believe that even as we go off of here, we are going to practice all of the things, at least a handful of the things that you've talked to us about. And thanks to the audience members for joining.
One thing I must say, Cyprian, one thing I must say,
Yes.
Cyprian, is everyone who's on, please go and register, like Cyprian said, go and join Wave. You would hear a lot more from Jide. Sadly, we weren't able to hear from Jide today, but I mean, there's so much that Jide also brings to putting a compelling CV together, and you could hear lots and lots more. You could ask more questions from Jide and the entire training team at Wave. So make sure, if you've never tried Wave, so go and follow the directions that Cyprian had shared earlier, and make sure that you make it a date with Wave. There's definitely a lot to learn from Wave. Thank you, Cyprian, for your time. I appreciate you, and just managing the experience with the whole technology enabling, the very interesting technology enabling we had today. Thank you so much for sticking through and just winging it really well. And thanks to everyone who's joined.
All right. Thank you. Bye, guys. Thank you.